Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Roundtable. We are giving you the inside scoop with our industry experts on real estate investing, specifically in rental properties, from finding and landing deals to finding out the do's and don'ts. That way you can avoid some of the pitfalls that some of us might have bumped into. Thanks to Rentometer, you're going to learn from these amazing panelists of experts we have here. They're going to be sharing their experiences, things that they would share with you, and if they can go back in time of what they would do differently if they were starting right now within the industry. So let's meet the panelists. Thank you all for joining here. So I'd love to start with you, Mike Lapsey, the president of Rentometer, the reason why we're all here connected on this panel. So I'd love to hear more about your wealth of knowledge in the rental properties market. And I know you have experience in the tech industry too.
Okay. So Megan, thank you for the introduction. I'd also like to thank AAOA for hosting a really innovative event and for including Rentometer. I'd also like to thank our panelists, Tracy, Gino, and Dave. They've figured out how to make rental deals work, and it's really generous of them to share their time and expertise with us. As Megan said, my name's Mike Lapsley. I'm the president of Rentometer. I've been building technology in the rental housing industry since 1994. My first rental housing venture was RentGrow. RentGrow built automated resident screening systems, and it is now part of Yardi, the property management system. We sold to Yardi about 10 years ago. The RentGrow name and platform is still operating, and it's the largest resident screening company in the industry now. After RentGrow, I put together a team to rebuild Rentometer. And this year we'll deliver 4.5 million rent comp reports to landlords, investors, renters, and throughout the U.S. And it's really anybody that has an interest in rental property has access to our system. So thank you for attending, and we hope you all enjoy the session, and I'll give it back to Megan.
Definitely. Thanks, Mike. We're glad that you're able to be part of this too, because you obviously have a lot of information to add to this. So let's move on to Gino Barbara. He has a wealth of investor experience, some business owner himself, author, and entrepreneur. I'd love to hear more about your business and your experience, Gino.
Hi, Megan. Gino Barbaro. I'm here, one of the co-founders of Jake and Gino. Our students have closed over 10,000 units, so that's one of the things I'm most proud of. One of the things that I am most proud of, though, is I have 6 children, married over 20 years. Very big accomplishment for me, so that's the thing I'm most proud of. But for me, multifamily started out back in 2002, bought a 4-plex by myself. I was fortunate and blessed to meet my partner, Jake, around 2009. We got into our first deal in 2013. It took us 18 months to get into that first deal back in 2013. And ironically enough, Rentometer was starting their growth, the exponential growth back then. And I met them back then, and I started using them as a tool. And I've used them along the way since then. So I thought that was great when they, told me to come on here. I said, wonderful. I love to, to continue to give back to them because they've given back to our community so much. Jake and I, we've control over 1,600 units. The first 1,000 units that we've purchased together was just me, Jake, and a partner, Mike. After 1,000 units, we decided to put our toes into the water of syndication. So the last 600 units we've syndicated. So we've had a wealth of knowledge, utilizing multiple different strategies, whether it's owner financing, whether it's joint venturing, syndication. And we primarily focus on the East Tennessee market within the 3-hour radius of Knoxville, Tennessee. We're vertically integrated. So I've seen the thick, the thin, I've seen it all. I've made more mistakes than probably all of you put together, and I'm still surviving and I'm still, thriving. So I love multifamily. I mean, there's so many benefits to it. And I think, what I'd like to do in this next hour with the panelists is just to dispel the belief that multifamily is pie in the sky. Because like I tell everybody, if a pizza guy and a drug rep can do it, anybody can do multifamily. Thank you.
That's a nice teaser to the information we'll hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us. And now next, I'd love to introduce you to Tracy Ma. She is a former engineer turned consultant. She's the founder of Financial Nirvana Mama. Tracy, I'd love to hear more about your investing experience and what you're working on lately.
Oh, thank you, Megan. So I started back when I was actually 28, okay? And I have probably what a lot of people could probably relate to is being, a poor student, then going into their first profession, and then trying to figure a way of how to get into the housing market. So what I did was I scrimped and saved and bought my first condo. But when I bought my first condo, I had all intentions of converting that condo to a rental unit. And after a year of living in it and then moving out and then renting it out to medical doctors, I realized the power of real estate investing. And I just thought this is a rinse and repeat process. So over the years, for about 10 years, I've been buying one rental property per year for about 10 years. And over that time, it's been about, I bought and sold 14 properties over that span while having a career, while managing a family with twins, and of course trying to enjoy life as much as possible and travel along the way. So doing all that plus real estate investing. And I think that by sharing this, I hope that it's relatable, like anyone can do it. So I'm so excited that Roundtable has sponsors this panelist and has a lot of great people being able to share their experience. And I think everyone can take a bit of everything and mold it into their life and grow their real estate portfolio. So thank
you
you
so much for joining, Tracy. I really love the unique perspective you bring. And of course, like you said, very relatable, because not everyone just fully dives right into real estate investing. Some people are in between or both, or have that in between time before they might dive in fully. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Now, I'd love to introduce you to David Perret. He is the creator of From Military to Millionaire, bringing in his experience from serving in the Marine Corps and his real estate investing. First of all, David, thank you so much for serving and your duty to our country. I'd love to hear more about your experience and your background in real estate.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. Michael, thanks for having me on. This is awesome. Yeah, I've been in the Marine Corps for 12 years. I'm actually had to take a day of leave to do this today to make sure I wouldn't be stuck at work. And I've gotten to travel the world doing all kinds of fun stuff with that. But in 2015, I realized that I was missing out on some stuff, bought a duplex, did the whole live in one side, rent the other half. And I was hooked. And in the last 5 years, bought and sold 55 units, currently hold 15 as long-term rentals. And then I'm a general partner on a syndication out in South Carolina. And so got a decent handful of units that way. And I've kind of dabbled in everything as I started to really just document what I was doing and blog and create kind of this avenue to help teach other service members and veterans, like, just, hey, look, I made some mistakes financially, and there are ways to get ahead despite the fact that you don't make $1 million a year and you work a full-time job. And so in the last 5 years, I've replaced my income, and I'm actually going to exit the military, go active duty, go reserves next year, and take it full time. So it's been exciting. So that's I guess just a little bit about me. I'm the normal guy who wakes up way too early to try to make stuff happen from across the world.
Someone has to. Well, as you can all see who are joining us, we have a really wide span of expertise and experience within the real estate investing industry. I'm really excited for just all these people brought together for this. And it's a real treat for me too, to be able to sit here with you and be able to chat with these panelists. So without further ado, let's dive in and let's kind of start with the basics. So what is, and I'd love for each of you to chime in. Well, Gino, we'll go with you first. I'd love to hear from you. What's your philosophy when it comes to real estate investing? Are there any sort of guidelines you like to go for, or, kind of ways that you like to look at of, creating certain deals? How do you approach it?
So I've had an evolution over my span of investing. Like I said, I started back in 2002. I think all the listeners, the first thing they need to do is to get clarity on their situation, right? What are they trying to accomplish? I mean, David is awesome. He's leaving, he's quitting his job. That's an amazing accomplishment. Tracy's got corporate. She's scaling her portfolio, slowly, surely, and she's growing that really well while the corporate, and she's got twins. She's really busy. I want everyone here to think about what their personal situation is. For me, back in 2008, it was the Great Recession. I had one restaurant. I was grinding it out. I wanted the real estate for full time. I wanted to become a full-time investor like David. So my goal was personal development. That's what I needed. I got into coaching. I got into life coaching. I went out and I sought a mentor. And that's how I learned the business from the ground up. And that's why I wanted multifamily. I didn't want single family. I didn't want to do one deal at a time. I really wanted to jump into the bigger spaces and start growing my portfolio. So for everybody out there, look at your current situation. Look at your resources. What do you have right now? Are you young and you have time? Are you older and you have capital? Learn all of the different strategies out there. Learn how to do owner financing, right? Learn how to go out and possibly raise money and syndicate. Learn how to buy deals on your own. And I think the first thing you need to do is really become clear on your market. What market are you investing in? As an investor, when you're first starting out, it's like, where am I going to go? I was in New York, so I couldn't invest in my backyard. The cap rates were terrible. Cash flow was terrible. Cash on, that was all terrible. So I said to myself, I need to go somewhere else. So my first mistake was going up to Rochester, New York, trying to do it in a market that, was just a linear market. There was no growth there. I was looking for cash flow. So for me, it worked okay, but I couldn't scale up. So like I said, I was really fortunate. I met Jake, who was in a great market at the time, 10 years ago, and it still is. It was Knoxville, Tennessee. So for us, choosing an emerging market, a market where there's population growth, there's job growth, there's opportunity, there's the ability to buy assets that make sense. I think that's what you need to start out with, and then start out by building your criteria on what you want to buy, right? What kind of returns are you looking for? How much capital do you have? What access to investors do you have? Start building that out. And then from there, select the market and then just start learning how to underwrite deals. And then from there, start putting in offers. But it takes a little bit of time. But for you to get clear on the front end, you'll avoid a lot of mistakes because you don't want that shiny object syndrome, which a lot of us do. I started with mobile home parks. Didn't do good because I didn't have my education. Then I went to a strip mall. Didn't do well there until I decided multifamily is the name of the game for me. And I've been doing it for the last 12 years and I haven't deviated. I haven't gone to crypto yet. I haven't gone to mobile home parks yet. I still have a lot to learn in the multifamily space. So I think if you can stay down and, I always say this one more thing I'll tell everybody, it's a long game. If you're an entrepreneur, look at Rentometer. They've been doing this for the last 10 years plus, and they're continuing to grow. It's an evolution, continuing to invest in the company, invest in the employees, invest in themselves. And that's what multifamily, and I think any entrepreneurial venture is, just reinvesting in your education, reinvesting in, learning and staying to the long game. So I guess that's what I would say the buy right criteria is, and just starting out in the space would look like.
Definitely. And I know, David, that you have experience in the multifamily sector, correct? I'd love to hear about your philosophy in real estate, and you can share a little bit about how you got started. Obviously, I know that you have experience with buying properties from, a completely different location from where you're based at.
I've done a little bit of everything, as I alluded to. I kind of had this shiny object syndrome philosophy for a little while where I was like, if I'm going to talk about this, I should try it. And that cost me like 30 grand on a flip at one point. I kind of decided that was a bad strategy. Mm-hmm. So I've done a little bit of everything. I started with a house hack. I lived it, and I love that strategy for, especially for someone like me who's in a situation where, in the military, you're not making a ton of taxable income, but you get housing allowance. And so if you can use a low money down loan, like the VA loan, FHA loan, or even a seller financing loan, and you can live in a fourplex and then rent out all the other units and cover all your expenses. Well, now you've suddenly gone from, hey, I can save a couple $100s a month towards investing capital to, okay, well, I'm no longer paying to live somewhere, so I can save all of that plus the $500, which, depending on your market, can be very substantial. I have for example, a buddy here in San Diego who just bought a very large fourplex that cash flows only like $600 a month, but he's paying down $2,000 a month in principal, saving $3,000 on what he'd be paying in rent, and he was already saving money. So he's able to build like $5,000 additionally into his net worth every month just by owning the property, and then he saves that and he's able to invest that elsewhere. So I kind of started that way, right? With hacking my living situation everywhere I lived to where I wasn't paying for living expenses. And then it's grown from there. I went from a duplex to a 10 unit, and then I've done a 40 unit. I'm a partner on a 146 deal in South Carolina. And so really the name of the game for me with all of that is just, I'm kind of a buy and hold for the most part until probate. I like to look at, I kind of plan on just holding forever because no matter what's the old quote? Don't wait to buy real estate and wait. At the end of the day, even if I'm in a cash flow market without a ton of appreciation over 40 years, that property is going to double, triple, quadruple in value. Rents are going to increase and I'm not going to owe anything on it. And so like Gino said, I agree with a lot of what he said about choosing your strategy, setting your goals first, and then playing the long game.
It sounds great. And as mentioned for the long game, Tracy, you got into real estate investing very young. So you started at a younger age that, probably an age that a lot of people wish they got started with real estate if they haven't. So I love to hear, you said, how do you go from buying that first condo, and how has your philosophy, the way that you strategize your investing, changed over that time?
I would say, like Gino and David, they have touched on the shiny object syndrome. I think the first thing anyone who's looking to really dive into real estate investing is figuring out the different types of real estate investing strategies that are out there. I mean, the simplest one that and this is the one that I completely stick to now, is because I'm juggling between, life, work, kids, I like to keep it simple. So I find single family homes the best. Now, obviously, a lot of cities won't work out for that. I mean, from where I'm from, it's really difficult. It takes a lot of time to find it, but there is still there. And I'm Canadian. I'm a Canadian investor. So the properties are really expensive in the city I live in. But I would say like duplexes are great, small multifamily units, but I like to keep it simple because unfortunately, like the more tenants you have, I mean, they can be like children. So there's just more time involved. So I would say, as a busy professional, if there's a lot of viewers out there who are busy professionals, to keep it simple and get to know what the real estate investing strategies are. There's you could buy larger multifamilies, which is predominantly going for cash flow, versus a single family, which is more for wealth and probably less cash flow because you just have less tenants in them. So that just by number crunching, that's a simple thing. Also think of when you go into real estate investing, I think a lot of people don't stress this enough, is when you buy or look at a rental property, think of who are you attracting as tenants. Because that's like, a lot of people are like, I mean, for sure, the numbers, the return on investment, that's all really important. But at the end, you got to think of what type of tenants are you attracting by looking at this rental property. So my favorite strategy for this is actually buying local, close to my home, just to keep my life simple. So I also look at macro fundamentals, like if the city is growing, population, there's a lot of infrastructure injection, because that means more jobs, then more people want to live in the city, then rent increases, decrease in vacancies. And then from there, when you narrow down to a city that has really good economic fundamentals, and you want to narrow in a neighborhood that is at least the average medium income of that city. Okay, so that's pretty important, that then you get a certain attraction to tenants, like a certain tenant that you could attract. And then when you narrow down to a couple neighborhoods that fits that profile, you want to then become a neighborhood expert. So then, when you see like a lot of listings that come in from the realtors, you get to know the price range in that neighborhood. And then it's easier to spot deals. It's like as if you're going shopping and you'll know like when something goes on sale. So that's pretty much the mentality as you're getting leads from all these realtors, and then you're like, oh, that's something interesting. Maybe I could do a showing, like go get a showing right away. So I think that for me, the biggest deals I've made has always been buying fixer-uppers, because you make money when you buy, not make money when so what I mean when you make money when you buy is that you buy a little bit more cheap, like because frankly, there's a lot of listings that just need some quick cosmetic changes, and you got to see the potential, like new flooring, occasional, like maybe a quick wall tear down between the kitchen and the living room. So things like that. And so I like simplicity, because many doors and deals means just another job for me, and I don't really want that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I value total return on investment, and so it's about making money when I buy. So hopefully that was a lot of good, helpful tips in that.
Definitely. I think the common themes that all be shared is to, try to avoid that shiny object syndrome. I mean, I'm sure anyone who first gets involved, they get really excited about the potential and the idea of getting in real estate, what you can do for your lifestyle and your future goals with finances and things of that nature. And then also just thinking about what works for you, your lifestyle, being realistic of what you can actually achieve. And then also think beyond that specific property. Like, David, you shared of ideas of how, maybe you can live within and get creative with the benefits that you might have for a current job you have. Tina, you just dived into how you didn't want to create a whole new job for yourself. So you were very specific on ways that you want to go about it. And Gino, you shared more your journey about how you found that multifamily is your preferred expertise of, when real estate. Now, Mike, I'd love to hear from you. What are some things that you've seen commonly used from some people who've used Rentometer, or just, people that you obviously interact with a lot of investors? I'd love to hear, some common trends or strategies that you've seen people do.
Well, before I do that, David, would you just give a quick thumbnail? You use the term house hack, house hack, HACK. Can you just give a quick thumbnail on what that means, just in case somebody doesn't know what that means?
House hacking would be renting out other units, rooms, or spaces on your property to rent against the mortgage. So for example, the house I'm in right now is a 4-bedroom, and I have 1 bedroom rented to a friend and another bedroom that I'm Airbnb. My monthly payment is $3,000 a month, and I make roughly $2,400 a month through those 2 bedrooms. I'm paying $600 to live in San Diego in a brand new development that should be costing me $3,000. So the other $2,400 I can pocket, I can invest, I can do whatever. And then because I'm also using some of the house as business spaces, office, whatever, I can actually write off a decent amount of the money I spend on the house. And between those two things, I'm essentially living for free. And then
Right.
that's not including principal pay down. And you can do that with a duplex where you rent other units. You can do that with roommates. I've seen people do it where they live in their garage on a couch and rent the house. I mean, people get pretty crazy with it, but you don't need to do that. You can just buy a duplex and live in one unit, rent the other unit, and effectively live for free. And then the cool thing is, if you do that and you do it right, when you move out and you rent the property, it now cash flows, and then you're still not paying for it, and you can go do it again. And it just kind of creates a snowball. So for someone who doesn't have a ton of income or a ton of capital, it's a great way to get started. And you learn how to be a landlord. You buy a house with a primary residence mortgage, which is much more affordable, and you get to build that capital to start the ball rolling.
Great. Thank you. So back to your question, Megan. Well, I mean, we see everything, literally everything. We see people who end up with property who don't even want the property. They inherit it, or they have to move, change jobs, and they're not in a position to sell it. All the way up to, people who are building, great portfolios into the hundreds and thousands of units. It's always fascinating to me the different types of strategies. You've some people who they have a criteria for investing in property, rental property specifically, and then somebody else. You talk to somebody the next day and they have the exact opposite strategy. That somebody would never build outside of the city. Buy and hold in outside the city they live in. Some people will only buy and hold outside the city they live in, and so I think where our panelists can be the most help, because just by sharing these stories, is helping people. Don't try and do it all. Pick something, focus on it, and make it happen. It might be a mistake, but if you do it the right way, you may not lose your shirt, but further down the road, it's going to pay off. It's going to pay dividends. So
definitely. So speaking of that, you want it to pay off. We don't want to get into real estate just for fun. We want to be able to enjoy the financial benefits of it. So I'd love to hear from you all on, how do you measure success when it comes to your investing, whether it's a property specifically or for how you're able to expand your portfolio. So I'd love to hear, Trace, if you can start with us. How do you measure success for yourself?
Well, the measurement of success is the immediate one, which is the numbers, is the instant return on the down payment I made on that property. So I will know as a neighborhood expert, and this is what I totally recommend everyone become, is knowing the value of that property. And so once you can value that rental property and it does not tie to any strategy, it's just knowing how to value something, then you can determine, is it going to be successful for you? I mean, sometimes maybe it's not as obvious, and that's where your realtor can help you with giving you comparables. But you can also just look at historical trends to know what that typical return is on a property. And, you know, it usually for sure keeps up with inflation. But because real estate investing, where you're borrowing 80% of the money from the bank, you're leveraging your down payment and magnifying that return. So for me, it's about instant return on investment, as well as how simple is that property. Being able to attract really good tenants is really, really important for me. I mean, I've had an experience when I was just starting out and I wanted definitely more cash flow, and I had a triplex. But the numbers actually worked out in terms of cash flow, you know, like that 1% rule, where 1% of the total rent in the month is, or the, what was it, 1% of the total property value is equal to the rent and per month. And it actually, I forgot how, in that beginning, I didn't know that when you buy a property, you should think of the tenants you attract. Well, that included like 10 tenants. And at that time, I was a full-time engineer and I was pregnant. And I was also trying to manage the property myself with my husband. And it was a lot of work, and I had to do, you know, renos and all that. So it's just a lot of work. So all to say is that I would be, again, stressing on looking at your lifestyle and seeing what, you know, like you could go with by return on investment, but also how it works with your life. Okay, that would be the true success if you can stay in the game long enough.
Definitely. And we just got a question from the audience. How would, you know, you're estimating the appreciation of a prospective property. How would you go about researching and estimating that appreciation so that way you can, you know, try to, you know, match up that 1% rule you like to go by?
Well, I actually don't like going by the 1% rule personally.
Okay.
I'll explain about that a little bit later why, especially as a new investor. I mean, if you're a sophisticated investor, it's a great thing, but as a new investor, I'll explain why, like when later on. Mm-hmm. But in terms of valuing a property, I would say the simplest method is obviously through your realtor. You can get your realtor to give you comparables. Also, you could just look at like the property taxes. Usually the property taxes, I mean, it's a range is what I can get at. With the property taxes, it would equal to 1% of the total value of the property, and it usually forecasts a few years out. So sometimes they might undervalue it or overvalue, but that gives you a gauge for someone who really just has no idea at this point. And then you could also then, there's a lot of the housing, like in Canada, there's the housing price index, but I'm sure in the US there's something similar where you can look at the average house price in that city, and your realtor can even narrow down to the neighborhood, or you could find some websites that give you that type of statistics.
Great, that's really helpful. And I love some of the concrete specifics you shared. So Gino, I know that you have, you know, you focus more so on multifamily, and that's kind of your preferred way of, you know, investing. How do you measure progress or success when it comes to a multifamily property? That's a whole different ballgame from the single family or condo route.
Well, once again, to me, it's been an evolution. You know, when I first started out a few years ago, I wanted to accumulate as many assets as possible. That was my goal, right? To become financially free. Now, you know, I teach my students, no deal is better than a bad deal. So really, you know, work on our 3-step framework, the buy right, the manage right, and the finance right. Really analyze that deal. And I want everyone to write this down. ROE, that's not return on equity. It's return on effort. If you're going to put a lot of effort into a property, like Tracy said, and there's a ton of effort, but the return isn't there, is it worth it? 4 and 5 years ago, I would have said yes, because I'm trying to buy everything possible. Now I'm really selective on my deals. We can go into the 3 pillars of real estate. You know, the first one is market cycle. The next one is debt. And the third one is the exit strategy and figuring out where you're buying these assets. What kind of assets are you buying right now in this type of the cycle? Right now, you're buying newer assets because everything's elevated right now. So we're looking at newer assets right now. Returns are lower. So you need to know what type of strategies you're going to be employing. Are you going to be doing syndications now? Probably not. They're going to be harder because you have to raise capital. So you're going to be able to give those rates of return less to investors. So for me, I'm not out there trying to accumulate more assets. I really want to buy stuff on my own. I don't want to, syndicate because I'd rather have less investors to deal with. Now I can do that now, but as I was growing and I was tapped out of money, I needed to go to the syndication route. So, I would challenge everyone to write this down also. This is what I live by now. I've lived by this. I've been growing companies for the last 3 to 4 years. Revenue is vanity, profit margin is sanity, and cash is king. It doesn't matter if you have 1,000 doors or 10,000 doors. I'm looking at a profit per door. And if I can hit $100 to $150 profit per door after all expenses, I'm happy. I'm thrilled. So we can do this because we're vertically integrated. We have our own management team managing these properties. So once again, I'm going to get back to it. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Early on, I was trying to buy everything. And that was a part of the market cycle 5 and 6 years ago where stuff was on sale. Cap rates were a little bit higher. Remember, the economy was softer. Rents were a lot lower. Now what's happened in the last 3 to 4 years, valuations have gone up because of a couple factors. Number one, money is very cheap. Right now, 30-year, money right now with Fannie and Freddie is sub 3%. You can get a loan for 3%. You know how cheap that is, money going forward. So that makes deals a lot cheaper. But what happens? Pricing is higher, right? And all of a sudden, when I was buying deals 7, 8, 10 years ago, rents for one bedrooms were $350 a month for a one bedroom in Knoxville, Tennessee. Well, now they're $650 to $700. So rents have doubled. So what has happened? Valuations have doubled. So for me and everyone out there, just figure out what you're trying to accomplish. And there's nothing wrong with buying smaller deals. We're looking at anything from 25 units to 300 units. It doesn't matter because right now it's tougher to find those deals. So if there's a deal out there that makes sense for us and hits our criteria, we're going to buy it.
Definitely.
Hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. And just to repeat, I know some people are really resonating with a couple of things you said to write down, just so that they make sure they have this full piece. You shared a quote that's on revenue is vanity. Can you share that
Yes.
3-step piece there?
Yeah. Revenue is vanity, meaning it doesn't matter how much you're grossing, right? Profit margin is sanity. And cash is king. What are you left with at the end of the day? My papa, Italian immigrant, he said to me, Dad, Gino, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. That's why I love real estate. That's why I love multifamily. Everyone out there, Google cost segregation. I mean, you may love Trump, you may hate Trump. I love what he does with the tax returns. I love multifamily because of cost segregation. Look it up. I've been employing it for the last 3 years, and it's an amazing strategy. So, we're always focusing on what we're grossing, really. But at the end of the day, it's what you're netting. It's what you're left with at the end of the day. So to me, that's why multifamily is a powerful vehicle. And I think David would agree with that also, as far as what cost segregation has allowed us to do. And just to continue to scale up, just think for yourself, what are you trying to accomplish? I mean, don't look at Instagram. Don't worry about people closing 300-400 units. Worry about what you can do with the capital you have and your vision. We all have a vision. The problem is with that vision, we get off the road sometimes, but that's fine. You get off the road. Continue to look at that vision and continue going towards what you're trying to accomplish.
Definitely. Thank you, Gino. And David, I know that, obviously you've already shared a little bit about how you measure success. I mean, you're living essentially for free in the property you're in right now because of the way that you've done your rentals within your multifamilies. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how what kind of things need to check off the boxes for you to want this deal.
Well, it's interesting that Gino said not to check Instagram because I was going to say that I gauge success by the number of Ferraris I can take pictures in front of.
You too, huh?
Gold chains. I was thinking about this and I was realizing I don't necessarily have a super concrete. My answer is more of a broad spectrum thing. So I obviously, for a guy who doesn't have a ton of capital going into things, my way of looking at success is I have to be super high leverage, meaning a lot of debt, low down payment, and then look at cash on cash return, right? My first property cost me $3,800 all in, and it was 120% cash on cash return, brought in $4,500 a year in cash flow. And it was, small win, but over 5 years, that's, I've paid for my down payment 5 times and I've been able to, so I had to start slow. So I look at cash on cash return as far as individual properties, but I was going to mention, actually Gino's ROE is pretty cool. Cause I was going to say right now I look at I call it the energy to income ratio. And that's essentially how much time do I have to waste on this property, because I bought my duplex when I lived in Springfield, and then I moved to Hawaii. So from Missouri to Hawaii, and I kept buying properties in Missouri. And then I moved to San Diego, and I haven't been back. I've bought a lot of stuff sight unseen. I plan on going back there. But for me, it's all about having a really solid team and being able to buy something and know that I can kind of hand it over and say, call me if there's a problem, please don't call me. Because I couldn't run I work in a vault right now. I don't have my cell phone for 10 hours a day. So I can't really do property management. So at this point, the two things that I really do consistently month over month to measure success is on the first of every month, I sit down and I go over how much cash flow I brought in, passive income from real estate alone, but also from whatever other things I've got my fingers in, passive income streams, and I calculate my net worth. And I think if you can just do that the first of every month or even just once a quarter, you get to see that big picture and you can see if you're going off the rails, right? There's all these metrics for individual properties and seeing which ones work well and which ones don't work well and getting rid of the underperforming. But at the end of the day, I just want to know, okay, big picture, did I improve this month over last month? Yes, great. No, okay, where did I go wrong? What expenses can I cut? What can I? Because I'm definitely more of a build the parachute on the way down guy, go big, go home. If I mess it all up, I've got a couple years left in life that I can figure it out. I'm young enough that I can afford to take those risks, and I still have a solid job. So if I fall completely flat on my face, I'll be okay. So I take a little bit more risks, and I just kind of look
Definitely.
at the big
So
picture
speaking of risk, I know all of you, I'm sure, like your journeys you've taken, there have been some things where like, oh, never going to do that again. So I love to hear from, each of you, just like, briefly, what's one thing that you'd share someone who's just getting into investing? Maybe they haven't purchased their first property outside of maybe the home that they live in. Someone who's just looking to get into rental properties. What's one thing you'd say, if anything else, don't do it? Whether it's like, don't have your first property be a tear down or whatever what's one thing that's like, just don't do this, or at all costs avoid this. So Gino, you can chime in first.
Well, I'd like to start out just by saying education times action equals results. And I mean, it sounds cliches. I love it. I'm an educator. I've got 6 kids. I'm constantly talking to my kids about owner draws, about investing in deals. And it's the language, Rich Dad, Poor Dad talked about it. It's the financial intelligence. You need to be financially intelligent, really. Your balance sheet, your income statement, and your knowledge is your report card in life. And you really have to understand investing. You have to have a mind shift. And when I first started, I didn't have that. I had capital. I'll give you another great quote. A person with money meets a person with experience. The person with the experience gets the money, and the person with the money gets the experience. That was me in my first couple of deals because I had extra capital, and David is grinding it out. And it's probably good that David doesn't have a ton of capital when he first starts out, because he's got to be really lean. He's got to be really mean. I mean, Facebook, how's that started? You look at all the entrepreneurs, they didn't have money. They had ideas, they had grit, and they were really educated, and they brought tremendous value to the marketplace. So if you're out there starting, really get educated. Don't think it's going to happen overnight. Put 3, 6, 9, 12 months into educating yourself. And then obviously the paralysis by analysis may start taking over. Join a community, get out there to Bigger Pockets, get out there to a Jake and Gino, Michael Blank, whoever that may be, resonate with wherever you want to go to, and start getting with that group and start, holding yourself accountable to what you need to do. And like I said, once you have that clear path, you'll know which way to go, because everyone thinks that capital is what they need to start out with, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. Because my first 2 deals lost 170 grand in a mobile home park back in 2005. It wasn't because I had the money. I didn't have the experience. And the 2 words that every investor needs to take with them is due diligence. I didn't have due diligence. I didn't know that process. I can blame the guy that got me into that deal. I can blame my friend who put me into the deal. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I was the one who was responsible. I was the moron who didn't know due diligence, who didn't know how to invest out of state, who didn't know that he created a syndication and I wasn't in a syndication. So all those things fall upon me. And that's what motivated me and inspired me to get into multifamily, because it's a basic human need. I love the fact that through the pandemic, we're still collecting over 90% of our rents, and we're in a great market, and we're still able to perform a basic human need. And can't buy multifamily on the internet. That's one thing you can't do. So that's something that I like. But remember, everybody, due diligence. Learn how to analyze these deals and have someone on the team who can do that.
Definitely, with that education, you can save yourself time, money, and many headaches in the end. And, just be patient. It's a way to help yourself curb that shiny object syndrome that you all mentioned earlier. Tracy, what's something that, if you could go back in time, or something that you've learned that you're like, okay, I know, avoid this at all costs because of, if you have certain goals in mind?
I would say for a lot of people who are jumping into real estate investing, it means a lot that they're probably really driven or ambitious, action takers. And I would say don't kind of think like, oh, I got to buy this, 100-plex right away. I would say start with something that's as simple like David was saying, house hacking. I actually did that for many years to be able to scale up. Like, yes, I had an engineering job, but like I'm an environmental engineering job. I'm not a computer, developer person with big mega money. So I would say try to trim your expenses. I would say like one tangible thing that I would absolutely avoid is actually low ceilings. Okay, so this is a story where I bought a property that had like barely 6-foot ceilings. Okay, this is the hardest to rent out. You can't change that until you knock down that property. So that was a big no-no, and it really I was really constrained in the amount of rent I could push. And then of course Gino, what he was saying is like, the other thing I wished was the getting a mentor. I mean, it's like you can save money by not having a mentor, but then I almost guarantee you're going to make thousands of dollars of mistakes. Like, it's like I made lots of mistakes, and it's only when I actually got to my 9th property, I actually got a mentor. So just to say, I wish I would go back in time and just get educated right from the beginning. And of course, avoid low ceilings.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a good concrete one, no matter how short or tall you are. That's important. Now, David, what's something that you would avoid at all costs, or just something that just, you would never make a deal with?
Well, to reiterate what everyone else said, education and networking are huge, right? I mean, the first thing you need to do is get clear on your goals and start learning everything you can about whatever you choose to do, and then get around people who are doing it, right? And obviously go for it. You got to take action. The thing that's bit me the most has been, I hate saying this phrase, it's a military jargon, trust but verify. I trusted and I did not verify. And on 2 different occasions that has burned me. On one, well, I've been in a lawsuit now for 2 years trying to get my monstrous down payment back out of a property that just, a lot of things that should have, could have, would have happened, and, things that, anyway, I won't get into specifics, right? It's just something that did not work out well. And a lot of it was because we had conversations on the phone, negotiating things, and they weren't followed up with emails and concrete this, that, and the other. So there's a whole lot of hearsay. But the flip I mentioned the other day that I lost 30 grand on, the guy was awesome. I trusted him. Everything seemed great. I was getting pictures. I had my friend was going by the property to hand him checks. My friend didn't know anything about looking at houses, said, "Oh yeah, everything looks great." And should have had someone else going by to look at the house because everything did not look great. My friend didn't know what was going on. And so I didn't do a good enough job of verifying the systems. And so I have this innate, I like to trust people. I like to trust people that people are good and wholesome. And if I pay you, you're going to do what I ask you to. And I almost feel bad micromanaging people. And that's something I've had to get over, because twice now I've been bit by trusting someone too much and being taken advantage of because I didn't want to be the micromanager who is verifying every step. And so I've come to realize very quickly that anyone who's actually good at their job is going to completely understand if you're putting in checks and balances, and they're going to be completely okay with it because they got nothing to hide. And so my biggest mistake has been trusting people too much, but which is a great problem to have, right? But you need to have some kind of a system in there just as a check and balance to make sure that the person you're trusting is actually trustable. So, both situations, they weren't by any means. I think Gino mentioned it earlier, not taking a risk that can destroy you. And so, any good deal is better than a loss. So, I mean, both of them were things that they happened. They were speed bumps, but they didn't destroy me. So it's all good. But just hard lessons to learn that didn't need to be learned. So I would just say, absolutely, no matter what, avoid trusting somebody so much that you don't put in checks and balances.
Now, for yourself, David, would you say bringing in a third party or a property management company has helped you with overcoming that problem? I know you didn't start out with that, but what made you create that change, and would you recommend someone to look into that when they first start out?
Well, moving 5,000 miles away across the Pacific Ocean was the main thing that convinced me to to utilize a property management firm. But I will never go back because it has made my life so much easier. That was the first like real tangible usage of a system for me, as opposed to just doing everything myself. And it was an immediate light bulb of like, oh man, paying 7, 10, 12% is 100% worth knowing that everything's done right. Everything's done without me. And I can focus on building the business instead of calling the maintenance man. And so that was absolutely worthwhile. But yeah, I brought them in. I've gotten to the point now where my team at this point, I can pick up the phone or send a text or an email and say, hey, I'm looking at going under contract on this property. Can you go look at it? Or, hey, I just got under contract on this property, and my property manager will schedule the inspection, schedule the appraisal, go with the inspector, go with the appraiser. They will bring in the maintenance team. They'll monitor the maintenance. Like everything can be done through that team at this point. And so, yeah, I don't even need to do the verification anymore. It's not me being a jerk. It's great. I can say, hey, look, my property manager is going to be hard on you. She's a real hard one. Oh man. Yeah. Sorry. And that's been the greatest thing that I could have ever done. When we talk about, effort or energy waste when it comes to dollars. Yeah. I pay them to do it, but it saves me headaches, time, and money. And yeah, that's the way to do it. 100%.
Definitely. And now, unfortunately, our time has flown by. I really appreciate all the information all of you have shared. And for anyone who has more questions on these things, you can go to Rentometer's virtual booth. They're there to answer any questions you may have, even things that are about the real estate industry, of course, about their amazing product. Everyone here on the panel has used Rentometer before. And as you can tell from these people, they've learned a lot from their experiences. So there's a reason why this is a tool to make things easier for you. And now, before we all say goodbye, I would love for you to, share a little bit about how, what's social media or some way that people can reach out to you. If any of you have books, feel free to share that. Just that way people connect with you more. Just seeing the comments here, people got a lot out of it. And I know a lot of people loved hearing your real life scenarios. So thank you all for joining us. So, David, can you share how people can find you online?
Yeah, I am. If you go to Google and you type in military millionaire, I'll pop up, the ugly mug with the mustache, maybe in uniform. Or if you go on Instagram, it's at From Military to Millionaire, and I always respond to all my messages there. And I was going to hold up Gino's book and self-plug for him, but
thank you.
So, but the yellow and black one he's got back there is a good one.
Great. Well, perfect segue. So Gino, can you share how people can find you online, and what's the name of your book you have out?
First thing I just want to say, Megan, thanks for having us all on, and Michael. Michael, thanks for putting this together. This was great. Just go to jakeandgino.com. Go to the website. You'll find a lot of stuff. We have 3 weekly podcasts, the Jake and Gino channel. We have a ton of blog articles. If anyone wants a PDF copy of the book, The Honeybee, just email me, gino@jakeandgino.com, and I'll send you a PDF copy.
Thank you. And Tracy, obviously people can find you for your business website, but what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Oh, for sure. Like you said, I have my website called Financial Nirvana Mama, and I'm on YouTube. So I post weekly, sometimes twice a week. So I respond to all my comments, and you could also find me on Instagram. But also, if anyone wants to, want a beginner's guide to investing in real estate, like I have that, you can just sign up through my website, and you'll get a quick guide on how to get started. Thank you. And thank you, Megan. Thank you, Michael, for having us all here. It's been like, I can't believe how fast time has gone by.
It goes by so quick when you're just talking about something so fun and passionate. I mean, we could have just, spent time all day together for this. Mike, I love for you to, share. I know people find rentometer.com. Please go to the virtual booth. And, Michael, I'd love to allow you to say goodbye and thank everyone for coming here today.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you all. This was really good. And, 45 minutes does go by very quickly. And hopefully, there'll be more of these events. And having participated in a lot of events over time, they really do build into something. And that networking and the learning, the things we can learn from each other are just invaluable. So thank you for participating.
Thank you all again. Again, this is the Real Estate Investing Roundtable. I'm Megan Corson. I was grateful to be able to connect with all of you today, and please enjoy the rest of the conference and connect with Rentometer at that virtual booth. And you already have everyone's information to reach out online. Thank you all for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.